Hey everybody, we are officially live. I am so excited to dive into another pre-symposium panel. So the pre-symposium panel is a gathering of leaders that are going to be at our upcoming executive symposium on October 7th. So in exactly 2 weeks in Houston, Texas. The topic is people-centric growth, aligning purpose, leadership, and profit. And essentially what we do as we lead up to our executive symposium is we take leaders who are going to be at the event to share their thoughts, their insights, their perspectives, their mistakes as it pertains to the topic. We've got three great leaders with us here today. We've got Pedro, we've got Erica, and we've got Charlie. Thank you all for being here. Pedro, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, everyone. Name is Pedro Van Hoecke. I'm the technical leader for Online Corporation, and I look forward to the debate on what's how to get the best out of people.
Absolutely. Erica, how about you?
Hi, my name's Erica. I am the Chief People Officer at Good Ranchers. Super excited about this conversation. Love digging into how people and all this work, all comes together.
And Charlie, how about you?
Yeah, hello everyone. So Charlie Shephard, I'm an IFS consultant and talent strategist. I help asset-heavy organizations innovate and really implement software through building people and really removing those roadblocks.
I love it. And I'm Garrett Mance. I'm the founder and CEO of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. So we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. And one of the ways that we build community is through our executive symposiums. So, anyways, let's dive into the conversation. Excuse me. So, topic is people-centric growth, aligning purpose, leadership, and profit. We're in such a fascinating economic time period right now. We see a lot of organizations laying people off, even though they're showing profitable numbers. We're seeing a lot of organizations make a lot of reorgs and a lot of switches going on, even though everything from a economic perspective seems like things are going all right. And then obviously we're also seeing a lot of organizations get impacted by maybe tariffs or other different economic or political factors that are potentially detrimenting their business. And they're having to make some hard decisions as it pertains to their people. So I'd love to kick off with an initial question. And that question is, how can we go about preparing ourselves, whether we're an individual contributor, a leader within an organization, a C-suite executive at an organization, how can we prepare ourselves for what is to come for our business and what the appetite might be from either our board or our executive team or things that we're even thinking about as executives in our organization, what the appetite for change is and how drastic that might look like. How can we prepare ourselves as well as prepare our teams for what changes might be lying ahead as we encounter the next 6 months? Who wants to go first?
I can go.
So,
I feel like always keeping, no, I'm not saying like keeping your ear to the ground in a way of like, but always being aware of the conversations that are happening within your team, not just being siloed into like what's going on in HR and the people operations, but what's going on in operations, what is going on in marketing, what's going on in our customer experience team, what are the conversations that we're having as executives, and what is the board saying? What are the conversations happening from our CEO to our COO? And always taking that into like, okay, how is that affecting the work that I do? And being able to have that conversation if there is something that comes up and it's like, hey, I'm wondering how that's going to affect our operations team or people ops or whatever that looks like, making sure that you're listening and you're taking everything in as well as having those conversations if something does come up and you do want to maybe, see so you're not just kind of siloed in your own department or your own role.
yeah, absolutely. And I bring it up a little bit from what Eric is saying, right? Really looking over the horizon, educating yourself, and you kind of hinted at it, Garrett. What's going on, what's going on in the world right now, and how does that impact my business, my people, and really developing that strategy from that really high level and thinking what's over the horizon for me, and then again underneath that, building a team up so they're focusing on the operational piece, and as a leader I'm always being educated. I'm always being ready to understand what's over the horizon and what's to the left and the right of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my side, I think it's important as an organization to really be aware of what's going on all the time. It's not just because of what's going on today. And so, what is important in that case is, what does that mean to my team? What does it mean to the organization that I'm working for? The group of people that I'm interacting with, right? And so, one of the things that is important is that my team members understand on what's going on and what it means to them, right? Because at the end of the day, it's them that either are able to help making changes if needed, right? Are they agile enough? Is the team really ready to take on change? And change happens all the time, not just because of what is happening around us.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like what all of you have shared. I mean, the one core theme that I feel like I keep hearing from all of you is this: we need to be aware of what's going on. We need to keep our ear to the ground. We need to look over the horizon. I mean, those are kind of very similar and core things. How do you balance that? Because I think that there is a healthy balance in that. If we're looking at it from a business perspective, if we are constantly looking over the horizon and not focusing on the here and now, we could cause ourselves to get into shiny object syndrome. I see a lot of organizations doing that where they're like AI, new software, new ERP system, new CRM. And it's just like, okay, hold on a second. These things very well could be the game changer that makes our business substantially better, but they could also be a major distraction from our operational efficiencies that we've got going on. And adding to everybody's plates, I feel like oftentimes when we make some of these changes, we're not fully conscientious or accountable to the impact it has on our people when we're asking them to implement these sorts of things. And so I guess the question I have here is, how do you go about striking that balance of keeping, you're looking over the horizon, keeping your ear to the ground, being aware of what's going on, while at the same time being able to box out the noise? How do you decipher the signal from the noise, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I think it does, and I think you're absolutely right. The key there, I think, is understanding really, I would say understanding who you want to be or what you want to be. I think, what you want to stand for is key there, right? And then now you're kind of using that as your guideline, like to kind of keep you in check, if you will. I know we're all guilty of it. I know I'm guilty of it. I have probably 20 lists of things going on. But the key there, right, is I think it's important as leaders to go back and say, we should always be asking ourselves, as we see these things, is it important? Is it impactful? And is it the right time? Right. That kind of helps me balance, again, because I have all of these lists of, because ideas happen, right? But the key is this really going to guide me to my North Star? What am I trying to accomplish? I think that's really the key, because otherwise, you're absolutely right. Guilty of it just last night of going, oh, this is kind of cool. And I had to time block myself and remind myself, hey, this is cool, but it's not impactful for what I'm trying to accomplish right now. So I'm going to give myself 20 minutes. I'm setting a timer, and then I'm moving on to what's actually important. So that's the key, right?
I think it's also important to have, I mean, I agree with all of that, but I think it's important to have the right leaders in place that are looking over the horizon and are strategic and, know what's coming and what is this new AI software that's going to really support our customer experience team, and have you vetted it correctly so that we're not just jumping into all of these things. So I think there's like this key role that leaders have to be able to make those wise decisions on what we do and how we do it, and is this something we need versus something we want. So I mean, leadership is so important, but this is one of the reasons it is so important, and the right leaders are in the right places
That's
that can look over the horizon, but also look at the day to day to say, okay, but this is where we're at and this is where we want to be.
Yeah, the way that I think we could, and we are looking at it that way, is it real? Can we win? And is it worth it? And that actually drives then what I call roadmaps to what that mean 1 year, 2 years out versus 3 years out versus 5 years out. And that helps us really stay practical and pragmatic on what we need to get done, where are our gaps. And if AI is part of it, then it's part of it, right? And we'll figure that out. If it's not, then move on, right? There is a lot of other things to do, but mega trends really drive what we should be working on at the end of the day, where things are going. And so that doesn't change. This is ongoing, right? And you have these peaks of, things that are happening around us. So don't get distracted. Stay balanced on today, tomorrow, and next year.
Yeah.
Man, I think all three of you gave some of the most complimentary answers to the same question, to like that added onto each other. Like Charlie, you gave the why, Erica, you gave the how, and Pedro, you gave the what. It was almost in a perfect sequence of and I think it's really interesting. So Charlie, you mentioned, okay, can we define what is our guiding light, who we want to be? I think most organizations do a pretty good job of that. Most organizations have a mission, vision, they put it on the wall. But I think where a lot of organizations fall into a trap is they put on a lot of vague corporate jargon words. They use things like innovation or empower or advocate or talent forward or whatever it might be, or grit, or whatever the fun word du jour is. A lot of organizations put that on the walls. But where I think a lot of organizations struggle is, Erica, into your point of the right leaders in place looking over the horizon. And really, the word I wrote down was alignment. Because oftentimes when organizations grow and get bigger and they bring on new leaders and executives, the way one executive interprets that guiding light is different than how other executives interpret that guiding light, that mission, that vision, that thing that everybody's working towards. And it manifests itself with a complete misalignment of what Pedro, what you were saying, which is it real? Can we win? And is it worth it? And that conversation, I don't think is happening enough in organizations. I guess that's my bold take. Would you agree, disagree? What do you think? I guess I'd be curious to learn your thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Garrett, and I think you hit the nail on the head, right, with the alignment piece. I think the alignment's key, and then it's also important to have some contrarians, right, to kind of keep that balance. But I would also say that, really understanding, right? So how do we make sure that we're understanding where we need to go, even if we're seeing it slightly different, right? On how we get there. The key, and that's the key on the alignment, right? Are we working as a collective to get to the same end goal, right? All of my military folks out there understand locate, close with, and destroy, right? So there's a common vision there, and everybody understands it. I think Erica kind of hit on it. Everybody understands what part they play and what the impact of the part they're playing in it, right? So I think that part's key, understanding what impact of the end goal, and then also what impact that has on me doing or not doing what I need to do. How does that impact to the people to the left and right of me? I think that's important, right? Because that drives that alignment. Because if Charlie's doing his piece, but he's not thinking about how that impacts Garrett and him doing his piece to get to that end goal, then we're not aligned. We're really not, right? We're doing things separately for the same goal, but imagine what happens if we're doing things together for the same goal, right? And that's where that alignment comes in. And I'm not sure if that was contrarian to what you're trying to get to, but I think it gets to the goal there.
No, I like it. I mean, shoot, this is a total middle manager problem, but how often do you hear that, oh, if I lead finance, oh, I need HR to get me this data, and they're getting it to me this data late, which caused me to get this data late to the operations team, which then it causes the data to get late to the executive team. The CEO's like, I don't really care how the data gets in. I need the data to get to me when I need it. And then someone's pulling an all-nighter and they're frustrated and burned out. That happens. I feel like that happens all the time.
I have some gray hairs because of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so the concept of looking left, looking right, how does it impact the people around you, I think makes sense. But Pedro, Erica, I mean, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think organizations tend to do a good job or not do a good job of having that conversation of, is it real? Can we win? Is it worth it?
I think we're not doing enough of it for sure, right? But one of the things that I wanted to build upon, it's how do you all pull on the same rope, right? How do you really make it what's in it for me, right? And that is nothing to do with whatever function, right? It has to do with do we believe it, right? And can we see it what it means to us at the end of the day, right? And so holding each other accountable and keeping it practical, tangible, right, for the organization is super important, because visions and strategies that are here, right, doesn't resonate with the people that actually need to go execute it. And so, in order to do that, I've always tried to make it real for everyone, right? And that you're building that trust amongst each other, and then you'll get to the point, oh, this kind of makes sense, right? To go after what makes sense for the organization, my organization, the company as an organization, and whoever our customers basically also, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think I look at it through a lens of like the people organization and hiring and who we are hiring. Are we hiring people who are able to have those conversations when someone says like, hey, we want to use this new AR, blah, 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 AI, whatever. Like, are we able to have the conversation as a leader to say like, okay, have you vetted it? What does it look like? And if we are not going to go with it, how is that going to continue to get buy-in from your team to keep researching and looking at different things while also saying like, hey, this is not it though. And so like having those conversations, I feel like are so important, and having leaders who are able to not just say no, but this is why, now let's keep looking, or let's keep, or this is why it doesn't align with our culture, which kind of leads to like having the right people at the table. And so that goes back to just like making sure that you have a leadership team, mid-management that fits the needs of the company. That if we have a team of people that are like, yes, men, okay, well, that's not going to help us. We need someone who's strategic. We need someone who's able to make decisions that are based on facts. We need, so just, I think knowing the needs of the company and continuously like looking at gaps in the company and where we need maybe different roles and different leadership styles. I don't know if that makes
It
sense.
makes tons of sense. And that actually, the thing I wrote down the moment you said that was this concept of CEO accountability. How do you manage up to your CEO to hold your CEO accountable? Because I think that there's something there. Because how often do you hear of a CEO where that CEO interviews a candidate for a certain role, and the candidate comes in and says all these cool things? Maybe it's about AI, maybe it's about increased revenue generation, maybe it's about increased profitability, and the CEO is just seeing dollar signs, bright lights. This sounds amazing. This looks great. But that is not in alignment with everybody where everyone else is. But like that CEO had a private conversation at his or her country club, and some other CEO told that person, if you can get your EBITDA to this level, you could have an exit to private equity for this much money. And the CEO's like, well, that sounds good to me. I think we should work towards that. But then doesn't tell anybody at the organization about this conversation that he or she had at their private country club or whatever it may be. And all of a sudden, they make some hire, and everyone's at the team's like, cool, they brought on this person. That's cool. They filled this one role, but they got a lot of thoughts on things that why are we doing this? I don't know. So I guess the question I'm asking is there a checks and balance when it comes to the CEO? And I know that's like hard because, it's the CEO. This person's your boss. You don't want to ruffle any feathers, but how do you go about checking and balancing your CEO in a way that is respectful, but at the same time asking the right amount of whys? Does that question make sense?
It does, and I think you hit on at the end. You kind of hit on, I think, where you go with that, right? Is helping, attempting to ask the right question to understand why, right? Help me understand why we're doing this. What part do I play in it, right? And then, and I guess one way I would frame that if I'm having the conversation is based on where our strategy is, help me translate that to an operational and executional manner. Help me understand it. What are we trying to achieve so that I can then pass that information down so that now the team understands when I do this thing, here's how it's going to work, and here's how it impacts the strategy. And here are the results we're expecting, and here's the behaviors we need, right? I think that's the key. Having that conversation to understand, like, what are the results we hope to get out of this, and what does that look like? I think that's the key, asking those kind of questions, I think helps, right? Because chances are they've gotten excited, so they really haven't even thought about like how do we actually achieve this? What do I need my team to do to be able to achieve this, right? So, and that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge of chasing the shiny thing. Is it sounds cool, but we've jumped, but we haven't figured out what we're gonna do. We don't have a parachute. Hopefully there's water, right? Um,
Yeah, I feel like um having those transparent conversations, and I feel like if you really do have a CEO that did make a decision like that, being able to have that conversation and it be like, I mean, it would just speak for myself, like I would never want to have a relationship with my CEO that I couldn't have that conversation, and I couldn't say, or our executive team couldn't come and say like, hey, love the AI, get where you're coming from, but back to what Charlie said, like, how does it serve our company right now and where we're going? Um, because we're going to be the ones having to work with this new team member. And I would hope that, you know, that would make sense to our CEO and how we all work together, because he's not just going to be working for the CEO, he's going to be working with our entire executive team. And so we want that to be, a good solid relationship and us buy into whatever it is or be able to speak into that, because just like any of us, we wouldn't just do whatever we wanted to do. Like, it's a conversation with our whole team.
Pedro, what do you think?
I agree with whatever he said, but at the end of the day, it's all about understanding, right? Do I really understand what we want to go and do, and can I contribute to it, and can I bring value to that mission? And if I can, then I should be able to sell it also to senior leadership, and then they can hold me accountable as much as I can hold them accountable on pursuing and going through with it, because foundationally, it will be strong, regardless of who's the leader.
Pedro, how do you push back or ask clarifying questions when a vision comes to you that's a deviation from what you've been working on and you're not particularly clear on what's in it for you or the team?
I think what Erica said is important, is that if you can't have that conversation with your leadership, right, and debate sometimes, right, depending on what it is, right, then I think you work for the wrong company, right, at the end of the day, right? So clarification questions are necessary and should be on the table all the time.
Okay, but you bring up such a great point. Are we working for the right company?
Yep.
I think there's a lot of CEOs out there that like to think, oh yeah, my company culture encourages debate and healthy dialogue and psychological safety and security. I know my people like the back of my hand and I know where their kids go to school and all the things that go on or whatever with their lives. But I think there's like a slight delusion gap with a lot of CEOs and the perception of what they think the culture is with what the actual culture is. And I guess when we're encountering this as a CEO, how can we go about maybe, I don't know, checking ourselves and evaluating and seeing what we can do to continually build the culture. At the same time, if we're not the CEO and we're thinking to ourselves like, are we working at the right company? When it's a hard job market, it's really hard to, you're like, I got kids. I got to pay for meals. I got to pay for this, that, and the other. I got all these other expenses. So you might be in this moment of I don't want to ruffle any feathers. How do you balance that gap? So let's start with the CEO. How do we continually refine our culture to be open to this dialogue of debate? And secondly, how do we go about identifying, what our pain tolerance for a culture that just doesn't fit us?
Yeah, so I think as the CEO, there's a couple things, right? You're always looking for the silence, right? So because the silence tells just as much of a story as the people that are vocal, right? And so I think that part's key. Look for the silence, right? if everybody's just agreeing with you, or if you're kind of not really getting a responses, you want to dig into that, right? Because typically that's a sign, right? That's a sign that people are have been vocal, or they're saying things and they don't feel heard. So I think that part's key. And then also look for the uncomfortable conversations, right? If if your team's having uncomfortable conversations with you, I would say that's a good thing, right? Because and then you have to execute on that. You have to really be in a place where you can say, hey, I need to reflect on what you just said and make sure I understand it right, and then provide that feedback, right? So that way you're both truly on the same page. And again, that's going to be uncomfortable for some, right? That's when that repetition comes in, because it becomes more natural the more we do it, right? So from a CEO perspective, I think that's key. And we also have to recognize, depending on who we talk to, we're not going to get a clear answer, right? So I can tell you, me as a Marine Corps officer, I would pass a message, but then I would give it a couple of days, and I'd go find that loneliest person in their own environment and just have off just a conversation with them. How's it going? Just a natural, and then I listened a lot, right? I learned a lot from that, because typically it's like, oh yeah, I heard we're doing this thing, right? And if they were excited about it, oh yeah, we're doing this thing, I heard out about it, then the message is getting out, and I'm getting clarity. There's some clarity there. But if they're kind of like, yeah, I just want to get away from you, then you probably have an issue there and you want to work through that. So I think that part's key. You have to recognize, even though you may be the most down to earth person that you think you are, right? That people see you, from a different perspective, right? Because of your status or whatever. So I think that's key as a CEO.
I feel like, just to add on, if you're not reflective, let's say you have a CEO who's not reflective at all, I would ask, like, am I retaining my top talent, my executives, or am I not?
Absolutely.
Are the only people that are staying because if I'm working for someone I trust, that I'm bought into, and I'm bought into the mission, vision, values, and I want to take your company and just run with it, I'm going to stay. If I don't find that, then I'm not. And so that's just kind of like, if you're looking at your organization as a CEO and it's like, oh, all of my highly effective leaders are leaving, that's something to reflect on, I think, as a leader.
One maybe a little controversial thought to bring to the table is, when CEOs think that they run a company and they run the company, then they're making a mistake, because they actually are leading a group of people that are the company. And all of what you two were talking about sits under that. At the end of the day, the moment that the CEO thinks he or she is running a company, then I think things go a little sideways, or potentially could go sideways. They understand that it's not just leadership, but everyone that's working for the company is the company. Then typically you have a culture that I like, in any case. But I mean, typically these are successful companies. A lot of the big concerns, meaning company concerns, are struggling with that right now, because everything is so siloed now that they're all CEOs of their own departments, and they're not aligned with what really the mission of the organization is.
Pedro, I want you to elaborate on that, because that's a really interesting concept. So when you say, does the CEO run the company, or when the CEO says that, when you say run a company, what do you mean? Just so that I can better clarify and understand that. Because you mentioned, like, oh, when a CEO starts saying that he or she is running the company, that's where things can potentially get sideways. Is it the insinuation that, like, it's all on their shoulders and not the team? Is that kind of what you're describing?
I've seen things that or leaders that might have thought, I am running the company and it's my way or the highway type of thing, right? That's where it goes wrong. That's what I was alluding to. Whereas if people really are able to manage complex organizations and complex groups of people, they tend to be successful in running companies.
That's interesting. So is there a better phrase that you would suggest the CEO say instead of like, oh, I run a company, instead they could say, oh, I'm the CEO of a company, or like what is a better like verbiage? Is there like a, I don't know, like a verbal reminder that one could use to, I don't know, try to eradicate that sort of notion? Because I think words have meaning, and I think if you say the same words over and over again, you build up this mentality. Like for me, I hate the word busy. So if anybody asks me how I'm doing, I will never respond with I'm busy because I think it creates the insinuation that whoever I'm speaking with, I don't have time for. So I might say I've been back to back. I've had a lot of really productive meetings. I've been my calendar filled, which are all true statements, but I won't say I'm busy. I don't know if that makes any sense. But there, where I'm going with is that you use the word like, don't use the word or don't use the mentality of I run this company. And I wonder, is there like a phrase or a thing that a CEO could say that might bring them back? Does that question make sense?
Well, great question, actually. But maybe where my thought would go, and I'm not saying that this is right, but if a CEO can articulate that he or she is running an organization that is changing blah blah blah, right, in the world,
Yeah.
or is contributing to whatever it is, then you know that they live it, right, with their people.
Yeah. And I think so. If I can help Pedro, I would probably try to phrase that as, I lead an organization of talented leaders, right? And so because now what I'm projecting and what I'm really framing out is I'm doing my part, but my team's doing their part too, right? And together we're going farther, right? And so I think that's the key there,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yeah, and it brings everyone on the journey with you, not just like
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
doing all of
It's
this.
not just about me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
One is funny because someone's writing down a note. It's funny because gosh, what you oftentimes see, especially in highly scrutinized organizations, especially ones that are public, they have a board, they've got to report on a quarterly earnings margin. Uh, it's funny. It's like whenever there's successes, CEOs want to take a lot of the credit, but whenever balls are dropped, there's a lot of finger pointing. And gosh, I think what I always forget the story of this, but I feel like I refer to it all the time. It's like an outgoing CEO gives the incoming CEO three letters. He's like, whenever you run into trouble, open up the first letter. And the first letter says, blame me, the outgoing CEO. And then whenever trouble happens again, open the second letter and says blame the team and like the economy or marketplace. And I might be butchering this story. I forgot exactly how it goes. And then the third letter says prepare three letters because you know it's on you.
I
You're the
love
one who's getting let go
it.
the next time you come into some hot water. And so I think that I think there's an interesting accountability gap that could be filled, would be a really breath of fresh air, but it's hard because eventually if too many mistakes happen and you're accountable for all the mistakes, like people are gonna be like, this one might be on you. Like it might be you who's the issue and not recognize the efforts you're making to actually try to fix the problem.
And I think that's where the reflection comes back, right? So really reflecting on where was the root cause here, right? So if there's a problem, where was the root cause and what can we do collectively? If I'm a CEO and it was something I did incorrectly, how do I prepare myself and then how do I leverage my team to ensure it doesn't become a repeat? And then vice versa, right? Is this something that the team, missed the mark on? What was the root cause? What do we learn from it? I think that part's key. We often forget that. How often do we make a mistake and we call it a mistake instead of what do we learn from it? And so I think that part's key, and that really goes back to that reflection on accountability, right?
Yeah. Pedro, Erica, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's good. I mean, is it happening a lot? Is it happening with the same leader? Is it happening with the same department? Like looking like really drilling down deep and really knowing your team and knowing your departments and being able to make those decisions if this is like a repeated thing, if this is like, and it's costing the company X amount of dollars and we've tried to, do the work. I mean, being able to have those tough conversations and grow people if they need it, or have the, whatever conversation that needs to have. I feel like that's the key to continuing to grow your organization, and not just like sweeping things under the rug because, you like the person and you like the department. And yes, we can still like and love people, but, sometimes the wrong fit is the wrong fit, and we have to make that decision. So I think, just to add on to that, I mean, that's my thought.
But that's all very fair. And you look, at the end of the day, the moment that we start to accept that people are different in their own ways, and we can focus on their strengths rather than their weaknesses, right? Because how many times you hear like, oh, we need to work on. No, we don't. We need to really put teams together that are diverse enough, in strengths, that actually can grow an organization, right? And then it's a matter, that's the first thing. The second thing to me is realize and accepting the gaps that you have in your teams, right? And tie that to where are we going with the organization, right? And then the third thing is then make the changes also, right? It is okay to drive change, even if it is letting people go or adding new talent, new expertise, new know-how into your team. As long as you know that it's part of a mission that's been set and ties into the bigger, vision, strategy, or whatever it may be.
Pedro, I got one last question. Because you brought this up before, and as you were talking, it kind of made me ruminate back to it. It's this concept of, and I've heard it referred to as before as like first team, second team sort of thing. Because you mentioned before, like sometimes you get to a scenario where if it's like, oh, I run this organization, and then all of a sudden you got all these little fiefdoms where it's like, oh, I'm the CEO of IT, and I'm the CEO of operations, and I'm the CEO of customer success. And like, don't get me wrong, I love the passion and excitement people have for their department, but sometimes it can be toxic in the sense that, people will guard their team like as if like they're a mother bear guarding their cubs. Like, my team does no wrong, you can't criticize my team. It's like, well, hold on a second. If these teams need to interact with each other and these reports need to get to this person or to these people by this time, like somebody might have dropped the ball here, and it's okay that, we hold people accountable. How do you go about breaking down those silos in a way that's, I don't know, you
Right.
show pride for your team, but not so much pride that it causes to the detriment of the organization as a whole.
Well, in my mind, it starts with looking inside, right? Wipe the in front of your own door first, right? Instead of trying to blame or trying to point fingers at people. That's one. When you do that, you tend to be able to build trust, right? And if you can make the statement in a debate where people claim my team and my thing and my job and my role, right? You can ask the question, so what? Then you think you're on the right track in my mind, in any case, to be able to have a meaningful discussion and try to help each other to become better.
One
Yeah.
practical book that we used for that was, I mean, because we grew so fast, and it was just kind of like we needed to understand that first, second team was that 5 dysfunctions of a team. And I think that really brought a lot of understanding, and like, oh, this leadership team is my first team. Like, we are all on mission to lead our departments together versus these siloed departments that we're just leading independently. And so that was just such an eye-opening book that we read as a company, and then discussed as a leadership team, to be able to just practically, with the analogy that they have, to come to that understanding.
Charlie, anything to add on to that?
Not really. I think they hit it on, kind of hit it right. It's really, as a leader, am I reflecting? Am I holding my people accountable? I think that part's key, right? And then as leaders, are we able to hold each other accountable and be accepting of, right? If I'm being held accountable, am I accepting of that? So really back to that, really kind of the topic of this, right? even as leaders, we're people. And so really how are we growing ourselves? And some of that's being able to be accountable, right? And then holding our teams accountable, right? I'll say as an individual, like I'll fight for my team, but I also hold them accountable. I'm probably worse on them in many cases than, most people would be aware of, right? Like I backed you up. However, don't do this again. So I think that part's key as well because you're kind of still you're taking care of your team in a safe way, but then you also hold them accountable. So I think that part's key as well.
Good stuff. Well, Pedro, Erica, Charlie, this has been a great pre-symposium panel. If you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I want to meet these three great leaders, RSVP for our upcoming Executive Symposium on October 7th in Houston. We're hosting the event at the Houston Dynamo headquarters, so home of the Houston Dynamo if you like soccer. Actually, one of our panelists is the GM and president of soccer operations for the Houston Dynamo. So it'll be cool to bring in a sports concept within the panel, which is fun, something we've not done before, which I'm really excited about. But anyways, I will post the link on how to RSVP for the event in the comments